Hi, welcome to the Allcast. I'm your host, Andrew Powell. I want to give a deep, strong thank you to my friend James Motes, who so far has been the sole sponsor of this podcast by volunteering to pay the podcast hosting fee for a year for me to be able to upload these episodes. Thank you, James. I love you dearly, and I'm happy you believe in me and the work I do. An update in my life. I now have a son. He is 2 weeks old, and he came 7 weeks early. I'll probably do a whole episode about the birth process and my experience being the man in that. His name is Atlas, and he is remarkable, and he looks right at me. He's very curious. His overall demeanor is really, really calm and very accepting. And he makes a lot of facial expressions. It's so cute for being so young. Like not just a newborn, but a 7 weeks early newborn. It's amazing. He has consistently been needing less and less support. So he's not on the incubator anymore. He's not on the IV. He is not on the respirator. Thank God, because it looked like it was smushing his tiny little face. I felt so bad. All he has now is a feeding tube and gets healthier and stronger every day. He's gaining weight. He's learning to feed. It's amazing and beautiful to see this little guy and to have him lay on my chest. It's really it's something else. I have also been blessed with a new work schedule to support his arrival, and my co-creator, Amber, and myself have been overwhelmed with support during this process. Gifts and uplifts and all kinds of stuff. So thank you to everybody who has been supportive of us and are bringing a son into this world. I never thought it would come to this, but I have to sell my beloved motorcycle. The shifting of priorities is a beautiful reality. My guest today is an entrepreneur, a freestyle rapper, a personal development coach, and a beautiful, heartfelt soul. In this episode, we cover a wide range of potent topics, from healing the masculine to planetary resources, mutual personal sovereignty, and plenty more. It's a good one. I really love it. We collaborated at the beginning for a bit of freestyle rap as a part of today's musical intro. Try to do every introduction as a collaboration with the guest in a musical way. Well, enjoy and buckle up for an engaging conversation with my friend Nathan Coury.
Yo, dropping into my hot space. Gonna win first place, cause my masculine has been taught to beat the competition. But that's a repetition that I don't want to perpetuate, because I cannot relate to trying to hurt other people for my benefit. So I'm gonna bring it back around, back into my heart space, cause I want to love one another. I want to work with my other brothers so we can build each other up and not tear them down. Yeah, I'm going inside so I can be a better man, a better day, a better today, cause I'm gonna be better than I was yesterday. Cause this is the crazy thought coming through my brain right now. We can all win. Yeah, we can all win. We gonna overcome all of our sins, because I'm not here to repeat the things in history that I don't want to see anymore, because I know there's more that's available to all of us. Yeah, you got to trust, so just tap into your heart space, and we're gonna make a new space in this world today. Hey.
Brother Nate.
Yo, what's up, Andrew?
So much. Life is crazy right now. With all this alleged pandemic stuff going on. I've been in and out of the hospital a whole bunch lately, so it's been really present with me as far as like people's posture toward it and about it, and everybody, all the workers are there. Every individual has a different demeanor when going through there. The people that check you at the door and check your temperature, some of them are nonchalant, some of them are like, oh my god, we got to be super careful. It's really a wide range of like perspectives. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time we're in right now, and each person is taking it different and handling it different is kind of what I heard, and I think that's it's a really big theme that I've been noticing lately in a lot of ways. Of there's these bigger events that are happening, right? Whether it's the pandemic or social justice movement or presidential election, like there's these big world events that are happening that's like seemingly one event, and yet each person has their own unique experience of that, and it has like a different relationship with it themselves. It's not like it's just this one thing. Like we're not all looking at the same thing.
Exactly.
Like we're all looking at it from our own unique perspective, and it's for all intents and purposes could be something entirely different.
You ask 20 different people, you get 20 different stories of what's happening regarding the presidency or the pandemic or whatever the subject matter might be. That's so interesting. I'm curious to find out some of what your perspective is on it, if you're willing to go into those places.
Yeah.
Generally I don't find joy in talking about politics. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I delved really deep into it. I was following all the legislation that was being written and voted on and all that stuff. And then eventually I found that it was so much for me. It was so much like weight on me to try and figure out what's going on in the world and how can I save it or change it or make it better or alert people to all of these dangerous, crazy things happening. It just became too much, so I stepped back, stepped far away from it, and until this last several weeks, I haven't really even looked much at it. And it's felt great. My life has been wonderful and peaceful, and not much in my day-to-day has changed. What has changed? Well, now now I have to wear a mask if I want to go do things. That's the main thing that's changed in my life over the past 7 years of not paying any attention to those types of current events. It's really like almost rewarding to take that space for myself and not feel like I have to give so much of my attention away to something that I can't control.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I got decently involved, I guess you could call it, in politics in high school. I would like go to school board meetings and stuff, so, like school politics stuff. My mom was actually on the school board for 4 years while I was in high school, and so I would go and like speak at these meetings and talk to my mom, and I like organized a little bit of grassroots movements around a couple different issues and actually partner with some other students from other high schools to do that. But yeah, for the most part, since then, I took a big step back. I actually went to Boy State when I was in high school, which is kind of like a mock government it's like a week-long experience, I want to say, at least a weekend, if not a week-long experience, where essentially it was like, men from around the state, high school age boys would come together and basically create a whole mock government for like a number of days.
Whoa.
And like elect each other to different positions and write legislation and all this stuff. And we were like separated in different counties, and it was just like, it was a very fascinating experience, a very interesting experience, but by the end also a very disheartening experience.
Why was it disheartening?
Because it took together boys, right, who were in their teens, and put us in this system, right, like this mock governmental system.
Was it a pre-existing one? Like they had one structured that they placed you inside of?
Yeah, I mean, they whoever organized Boys State like organizes the whole thing, and you know, essentially you're like, it's like for a week you live as if like you are like the government, you know, and like you create your own rules, and like you live in these dorms and stuff, and it's like you're for a week like isolated from the world in your own little mock government, and you hold these elections, there are different rules and all the things you have to follow. And it was disheartening because I just saw a lot of ugly pieces of masculinity come out.
Yeah.
And there was just, it was like so quick that we were inundated into this mindset in this system, and people were just doing everything they could to, you know, game the system and take advantage of it, and just like, you know, try to move forward and protect their own interests without much care for anybody else. And that's what was disheartening, is there was no foundation of connection or compassion or desire to genuinely do what's best for the highest good of all. It was simply like, what can I do that's best for me and like these other people that are like in my clique. And it just was incredible almost how quickly we all got so serious. And by the end, like I was very like emotional and even like furious at certain things that were said and that were happening. And I remember at the very end, it was almost this movie like moment where there was this huge like argument happening when it was like, you know, I don't know, I want to say like a, you know, Congress in session type of session, and like nobody could agree, and at the very end we weren't coming to any kind of conclusion, and one of the adults had to step in and be like, well, that's it, we're just gonna like cut it off here.
Whoa.
And then like pretty much the weekend like ended like in basically this culmination of like there's no solution in sight for anything that we're trying to deal with.
Was it based off of our government or the way our government is run right now?
Yeah.
So you go into the structure of like our current style of government, and then you're expected to make it better, or so you're set up to fail.
Yeah, I mean, not technically. That was, I don't think that was their intention, but you were set up to experience, like the government as it runs, and I'm like, this is a shit show. Like, there's, I see why nothing good, can happen. Not that nothing good can happen. I think I think the world is what it is, and I don't want to like place a harsh judgment on that. I think overall, humanity is evolving as it can, and society is imperfect, and we're doing the best we can. Yeah. And it just, I guess from my perspective today, it gave me an appreciation of the complexity of the system, and the complexity of trying to create a fair system, and how difficult that is. It gave me an appreciation for the difficulty of it, and it showed me a lot of ways that our system is very broken or inadequate to actually get to what we want. Mm-hmm. To actually create the society that we want. It's a very challenging thing to do that. And I think one of the biggest takeaways I had from that is it's all about the people. It's all about how people show up. It doesn't matter what system it is. Sure, there's probably better and worse structures of systems, but at the end of the day, I think no matter what structure you have, if people are in a certain mindset, or I'd say even heart set, about how they're showing up and what their ultimate goals and intentions are and what they're trying to do, and how that affects everything. How the incentives are aligned. It's all a matter of what is each individual person's awareness of themselves and how they fit into this bigger thing, and having empathy. A lot of those qualities were missing, which is kind of to the bigger issue of masculinity.
The core of the issue, right?
Masculinity has been very missing in certain qualities that I think would enhance it. So there was just, I guess you could label it toxic masculinity. I don't really like that term too much.
Yeah, it gets overused, it seems, and it's too general. Like, we don't know what we're talking about. What I hear that we're talking about is that the way that this government thing was set up is that it leans towards selfishness, because there's no, what you called, heart set. There's no heart in it. There's like, okay, well, what can I do for me and the people I care about, and then fuck everyone else. Mm-hmm. And there's not that conscious awareness of like, okay, well, how is this going to affect, these other areas or these other people, the different generations? And it's really, really, really hard as any person in any point of power to consider the butterfly effect of all the things from one choice over time.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, how do we come together as people to gain like a combined heartfelt intention of we really all want to make this a better place for everyone without overlooking I guess I don't know, without like how do we do it? How do we come together is the thing. And it kind of has to come from the heart. Otherwise it becomes selfish and it becomes whatever, the shadow of the masculine.
Yeah, it's like, you know, if you have too much logic without emotion, right? Like now you're so in your head that you disconnect from like what's really important. Also, I think if you have too much emotion without logic, which is another big theme that I see in the world the last number of months, then you're disconnected from long-term outcomes that you're actually trying to create and reach to. If you're so overcome with emotion and you don't tie that to like analysis and like checking yourself and like, okay, what is this? I have all this energy with my emotion that I'm using to try to create change, but if it's not logically connected to, you know, outcomes and progression and actually like measuring against like the bigger goals that we're aiming for, you might just keep running yourself in circles, in destructive cycles, and not actually even get to what you want. So I think it's really like a harmonization of the two that's needed. The head and the heart, the logic and the emotion is really needed. And I would even say, you know, on kind of the selfishness piece, I think selfishness has a place and importance, but I think it is very limited when it's not tied to selflessness. And so what I mean by that is, you know, I honestly don't judge people for being, quote, selfish in terms of like wanting to create, you know, safety for themselves or their families or the people close to them, you know, wanting to bring more resources into their life so that they can take care of themselves better. I think safety is important. I think taking care of ourselves is important. I think taking care of our needs is important, and taking care of the people around us. I think most people just don't take that far enough, or when they do start accumulating more of an excess of resources, they almost try to fill a void in themselves with those excess resources, or just don't utilize them in a way that could be more beneficial to others. It's like we look after ourselves first, and then let's say our family unit, and then let's say like our friends, but it's like for most people it usually doesn't get further than that. But certain people who have more resources, more power, more opportunity to influence, I think there are many people who do their best to utilize that in a way that benefits a lot of people. And I think there are many people who are not tapped into that, who could utilize their resources more effectively to see, you know, extend their family to like the whole human family, like all of humanity. And so I think ultimately that's, you know, in just kind of a high level place, I think that is a big piece of the solution is how do I align, you know, my personal selfishness with like the selflessness? How do I align like my safety and resources, you know, knowing like what's enough for me, and then like what with my excess, how can I give and share with others who may have a more challenging time taking care of even their own personal needs. So I think if we can align our personal desires and intentions with the collective and do our best to, you know, not forget about ourselves, because that's important, but like, you know, notice where we do have extra to give, or ways that, you know, I would say even better than that, like how can I benefit myself and others at the same time?
And I think that the selfishness comes to a point where it's changing when you don't, when we're not honest with ourselves about how much do I actually require to do what to do life in general. Like what? Okay, there's this. Like capitalism's a good example. I'm not shitting on capitalism in any way. Capitalism's a wonderful, beautiful, amazing thing, but capitalism is the whole idea behind it is, well, no, I'm about to speak out of turn. It seems to breed an attitude of give me, give me, give me, hurry, hurry, take, sell, 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 without considering the ramifications of the other side of that. And so I think what you mentioned earlier with the head and heart, the emotion and the logic, or the masculine and feminine within the individual, whether you're a man or a woman, the balance between the emotion and the logic, the head and the heart, is finding that balance will help us to really be in truth with ourselves about how much we actually need. Do I need to buy all that extra food? Or is that something different? That's something else internal? Is that a different type of hunger that's going on there? And that particular one runs through me quite strongly. Is I buy and eat way more than I need, and that one's been hard for me to kick. But that's a really good symptom of an imbalance of something that kind of bleeds into the rest of my life. It doesn't allow me to see where can I turn the dials down of like, oh, I don't need all that or all this when it comes to stuff, material stuff or wealth or money. More money would be great, but I'm making more money now than I've ever made in my life, and I'm still sucking at spending it and allocating it. So more money's not going to do me much good. I'm just going to continue the same cycle in a bigger way. So it's about like being honest with myself about where am I spending this money, where can I cut back and reallocate, move the pieces around the chessboard.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
So how do we find head and heart coherence? How do we find the balance between the mind and the heart? They're connected by the body. What?
Yeah. Ooh, this is good, man. This is getting really good.
Yoga's my method. Yoga's my main preferred method, I think.
Yeah. To kind of answer that more directly, I think there are certain body-based practices that are super helpful in kind of reconnecting the heart and the mind, which I think have, at least in our society, perhaps a natural tendency to be disconnected. We often compartmentalize like where we can show up with our mind and where we can show up with our heart. And I think with men specifically, there's even less space for us to show up with our heart and our emotions. We're taught from a young age, most of us, and I'm making some generalizations. Obviously, each person's experience is unique, but I think in general, men are not taught one, that it's okay to show and express emotion in general. Vulnerability. Yeah, being vulnerable is a sign of weakness, is what we're taught. And, that's unfortunate. And then, we bottle that up and we don't know what to do with it. We're told to just man up and just put our heads down and be stoic, which in and of themselves is I'm not even in railing on that, because I think there is a time and a place to just put your head down and do stuff that's uncomfortable and to build that kind of endurance. But I think it needs to be balanced with having safe spaces to allow our emotional selves to come through as well. And I think that a lot of men take it to the extreme of not giving themselves that space because, one, they don't think they have permission to go there, and two, they don't even know how, and three, they don't have anyone to do that with. Yeah, so that oftentimes it takes another person to do that with.
Yeah, sometimes it takes seeing somebody else being vulnerable to feel like you have permission to do it on your own. Watching another man cry or something like that, and it's something that's pretty gets pretty touchy when it comes to a lot of men. And when you say safe space, I don't like that phrase, but I know what you mean. And what came to mind when you said that was not necessarily an actual space, like a designated location, but like a community, like a grouping of people, like somebody you're tight with, or somebody that can actually, like a shoulder to cry on, like a real person who really gives a shit about your heart, about your life, and about where it's going and how it affects you. And so I think that that's one of the main things that men who don't have like a men's circle to be a part of, I think that's important for us to find as men. Yeah. Because if we keep leaning on the woman, I don't think they're carrying so much as it is. with what they have to do in their mission as human beings on this planet, that we can't continue expecting the women to be our mommy as we grow up. So stepping into our manhood and supporting each other as men on an emotional level, because we experience emotion differently than women to a degree, but we experience it similarly to each other. And a lot of the unspoken struggles are exactly that. They're unspoken, but they're running through a lot of us. And so those men's circles, those safe spaces, I guess. That's such a funny phrase to me. I heard somebody talk one time about safe spaces. There's like a designated room with kittens to pet and shit. And I was like, that's not my kind of safe space. That's not really. That sounds dangerous, actually, with cats. Cats are wild. But
true.
The community aspect of that safe space, I think, is crucial for us today.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you brought that up. I know that I have just over the last few years really developed a super tight group of men that I connect with, and yeah, when I use the term safe space, I think everybody has different experiences and definitions of words, and I appreciate you just sharing like what your reaction was to that. I love that, and I honor that. And for me, safe space is more of a state of being, and like a state of consciousness that someone can show up and express themselves in a way that normally they would receive some type of pushback or resistance or judgment or suppression. But a safe space is a place where they are able to express themselves in those ways and be received, and not have to really worry about whether or not it's okay for them to share or show up in certain ways. So that's kind of more what I mean about safe space, which could be tied to a physical space, but it might not be. It might be just being with a particular person.
Yeah.
It might be, being on my yoga mat and in the middle of class, like being able to like cry. It could be anything of that sort. It could be a person, an activity, a physical space, a group, with a certain group of people. It could be. So I think those safe spaces are important, or it could even be like with yourself and giving yourself the right environment in order to be safe to express yourself in certain ways. I think, I really like what you shared about not putting an extra burden on women to process and understand our emotions in certain ways. I think in certain ways, women can and desire to support us in our emotional journey, and I think in other ways we need to take that on ourselves.
Totally.
Either one, with ourselves. I have a friend who recently was telling me how the last few months he would just go out into the nature, go out into the forest and camp by himself, because he was so afraid of being by himself and being alone. But he knew he needed that, and he knew he needed to be with himself to better understand who he was. And this came after a pretty severe breakup that he had with a woman that he really cared about, and he knew that he had to become a better man, not necessarily to try to win her back, but that there were certain ways that he wasn't able to show up in that relationship that he wanted to, but every time he tried to, there was just this floor that he couldn't break through to get to deeper vulnerability in himself. And she was doing her best to call him into that, but she could only get so far in supporting him in that way, and he knew that that was his work. And so he went off into the woods and spent as much time alone as he could the last few months, and he had some huge breakthroughs in doing that. I think that can happen with nature. I think that used in the correct way, I think plant medicine can be really supportive in that capacity. And I think also being in a men's group, like you said, can be very supportive in a different way, especially if you don't know where to start, or being by yourself is too much. I think having the support of other men can be really powerful. And I think the last way that I think is really important, that's something that I more and more recommend to anyone, is having someone support you who is not a friend, family member, coworker, someone such as like a coach or a minister or a therapist or someone like that in a professional capacity to support you in order to, who has been trained to help someone move through those processes, and who have certain tools and frameworks that they can support you with so that they can teach you how to better support yourself, really. So I think those three, you know, being with yourself, being supported by other men, and then also being supported by a professional of some type, all can be really powerful ways to, you know, get better in tune with our emotional self, connect the heart and the head, and get more embodied, get more dropped into our bodies where we are more whole and able to show up in ways that ultimately, I think the one of the end goals of doing that work is so I can be, you know, more aligned with the collective while being tuned into my own needs, and find more and more ways that I can show up in the world that supports both.
Yeah, it seems the deeper we tune into ourselves, the more apparent it becomes that we are a working cog in the whole machine. And you mentioned crying during yoga. You're like, oh, if I want to just, you know, if I'm doing yoga and I just want to sit down and cry, yoga can do that to you. It's breathing into the stuck spaces inside the physical body, like with psychosomatic illnesses, stuff that is stressful in your life and shows up as back pain, and you never injured your back, but you have back pain. It's like, well, yoga, you're doing these certain shapes and breathing through those shapes in order to open up those spaces to allow for the emotions that have been stuck in the fascial tissue to release out of you. So it makes perfect sense to be able to sit down and have to cry in yoga class or whatever. And then the other thing about the women supporting, like, women are amazing resources for emotional support. However, something that I as a man have gotten stuck in is not knowing the difference between emotional support or solving my problems by just feeling good, like having women just like make me feel good, you know, whether it's sexual or otherwise, there's friendship, or just being around women, it feels good. Like, I love women are amazing, they have so many beautiful gifts, and we as men need to understand that there's a difference between being emotionally supported by them and hoping that they're going to like make all our problems go away. Yeah. Because it can move quickly into like a numbing or an avoidance. That's a pretty interesting one.
Yeah. I love that distinction, and yeah, kind of how that shows up in my romantic connection is we have agreements with each other, and one of our agreements is mutual sovereignty. So sovereignty, for those who haven't heard that word, essentially means that like you are responsible for yourself, and you take ownership over yourself, your life, the outcomes. Like you have all the power within you to create the change that you need in your life. That's kind of how I would currently define sovereignty for me. It's not putting your issues or your problems on other people. It's like taking that power back and taking ownership and being truly empowered. And it's not to say you can't get support. It's not to say that you can't receive help, because I think that's an essential part of the process. But it's saying at the end of the day, this is my responsibility to take care of, and I can't wait or rely on anybody else to do this for me. And so I think when one does show up with that intention, you know, not that you'll get it right or perfect. There will be times that you'll probably fall into, you know, putting your problems on someone else, or codependency, or whatever it might be. But I think setting that intention of mutual sovereignty, which is more and more how I show up to every relationship.
Not just the romantics.
Not just the romantics. It's really a beautiful thing, because it reminds me that I have ownership over changing my life, and it reminds me as well, this was almost unintended at first, it reminds me that other people are responsible for their lives too.
Yeah.
And
so not to take on the burden of other people's emotional weights if you're a feeler. Like if you feel someone else's pain,
Definitely.
It helps create that boundary. You could call it mutual sovereignty.
Mutual sovereignty.
I love that.
Yeah, and that was a really important step forward for me, especially since, you know, I am such a caring, giving person. I think I learned a lot of that from my parents, especially my mom. You know, she will give until her cup is empty, so to speak, which on the one hand I think it's a very admirable quality, and I wish that more people were as selfless as she is.
But then all our cups would be empty.
And there you go. and so the new model, so what mutual sovereignty is for me is giving from a full cup.
Yeah.
It means I'm doing the work to fill my cup, and I'm giving from my overflow.
Yep.
And that's something that one of my coaches right now really emphasizes, like, give from your overflow. Like, stop trying to give back or give away so much, because and in like a really penetrating way is like, you're not helping anyone when you do that. He's like, you're not helping anyone. You know, you're giving away the things you need to take care of yourself, to actually show up with the right energy to actually make some real change. And you need to be more selfish and fill your cup first, and not let other people dip down below that line that you need to be at your best, and give from your overflow. Like, keep cultivating more, and when you have a little bit extra, give a little bit extra. But that's actually sustainable, and you're going to be able to help a lot more people. In the short term, you might help less people because you're so used to giving yourself away. But if you just take a step back and really give to yourself first, and make sure your cup is always full, don't feel bad about that. Like, feel really good about that.
Yeah.
And then know that with your excess, you'll keep creating more excess, because it's like compounding interest, right? It's like if you keep dipping into your base investment, like, there's nothing there to compound.
Yeah.
But if you keep that, if you don't touch the principal, like, then you can give more and more and more. It's mind blowing, right?
That was awesome. That's how the selfishness or the masculine shadow can that's one area that it can be solved, is by employing mutual sovereignty in all relationships. Because once you understand these are my needs, I have to fill them. It's not anybody else's job to do that. Once my needs are full, then I understand that these are my boundaries. I have to fulfill these needs for myself before I try and go out and take care of somebody else's needs. Because if I'm doing that from a place of lack, then it's only going to exponentially expand in lack. And we want to exponentially expand in abundance from ourselves, from the heart. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm glad you resonate with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's a process. I think that we all come from certain places of dependency and codependency, and I think, you know, I recognize that I have worked my way to a privileged place to be able to do so. I think there's a lot of people out there who don't necessarily have the privilege to give themselves enough to have a full cup, you know, but I think it's something that is possible for every person.
So many of the elders, as we call them, say that it's selfishness to take care of yourself first, when I don't believe that that's quite so.
Yeah.
There's a line that can be crossed where it becomes selfishness, but ultimately the filling of that cup is what needs to happen first.
Yeah. I would say that the bigger problem I see is that people aren't filling their cups up enough. And, you know, yeah, there's cases on either extreme, but I think that there's a lot of people who haven't been given that permission, especially those who are more into, let's say, spirituality and like trying to make the world a better place and trying to help other people. It's like there's a predominant undertone of like, you need to give until you have nothing left. You know, there's that one verse in the Bible, I'm not trying to quote it directly, but it's like, you know, it was like the woman who gave her last dollar that God looked, you know,
smiled upon
and you know, was going to heaven, and this rich man who just gave from his excess was like, you know, basically like, oh, well, you know, that didn't mean anything to you anyways. But I think it can be the opposite. And I think that perhaps in a lot of people's cases, they could actually use the medicine of giving from their overflow, and that could actually make a much bigger difference in their happiness and fulfillment, as well as increase their capacity to give to others. You know, I think that's why any platitude I hear, any quote that I hear, I think it always has to be taken within the context of like, what do I actually need? And what is actually going to be supportive of me growing into the next best version of myself. And sometimes that means trying out some counterintuitive wisdom, something that I might not be hearing from, the typical source of wisdom that I'm, surrounded by, and just trying things on. So I'd say if anybody listening is feeling like, this resonates, like try it out. Try giving yourself a little bit more, even if you're in a place of, feeling like you're just, working all the time just to make ends meet, or just to like take care of your basic needs or your family's basic needs. Like, see if you can't carve out just a little bit more time each day. Like, give yourself 10 minutes to just sit down, meditate, relax, like listen, take a bath, like whatever it is that's like
have a bath.
like whatever time
if you're gonna do that, put Epsom salt in it. Do yourself a favor.
100%. Essential oils too, if as a bonus, if you've got them.
Oh man.
Just whatever you would think about like giving to someone else, like give that to yourself. If you were gonna like give someone else a massage, like give yourself a massage, like buy yourself a massage. If you can save up a little money, like do something nice for yourself, just to get in the habit of it, just to see how it feels to give to yourself. And I think a lot of people who lean into that realize how good that feels, and you just want to do it more naturally. And then over time, as I started doing that, I noticed that I had more to give. And it's like if I show up and try to help someone for an hour, but I'm in a place of depletion, I can do maybe like this much good for them, a very small amount. If I instead took 50 minutes to take care of myself and get myself in a good state, I can show up in 10 minutes, do exponentially greater good for that person than I otherwise would have been able to do. Perhaps that's reminiscent of the whole, like, if you're going to chop down a tree, spend 80% of your time sharpening the axe. And then,
damn.
It's like...
Yes, that's exactly it.
It's so true. Like, it's so relevant.
So we're talking about filling our cups and defining our needs. When you define your needs, then you can define, well, based on those needs, these are the boundaries that I need to have in place in order to keep those needs together and to fill that cup. Everybody is going to have a different liquid that they're filling their cup with, more or less. Like, what's your flavor of self-care? And that, and if you don't know it right off the top of the head, then maybe take that 10 minutes that Nate is talking about and sit and quiet and listen to what the body wants, what the body needs. Does it need to stretch? Do you need to sleep more? Do you need, like, with simple shit? It's really simple stuff, and it's just about listening. And you're not going to like this one, but being obedient to what is being told to you and what you're hearing that your needs are, because it's really counterintuitive to take that time for ourselves a lot of time and to go against the needs of others. Especially for me, I guess. But Nate, what are some ways you fill your cup?
Good question. Well, first I'll say it's evolved over the years, and it will continue to evolve. But my current ways of filling my cup is I presently go to yoga maybe once or twice a week. I really like hot yoga specifically.
Powerful.
Get my sweat on. Feels really good. And I'm not as naturally flexible, so it's kind of nice to show up in a room that's already warm, gets my muscles a little warm to start, and makes it a little bit easier in that way.
I feel like I should add in a little golden droplet that flexibility is not the goal or the purpose of yoga, period. Go Google some stuff.
Sure. Oh yeah. Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's for me yoga is about the feeling I get during and especially after of being more dropped into my body, becoming more centered, more clear, more calm, more empowered. And yeah, just like it helps me to move. I move a lot of energy in my weeks, and it helps to drop in and integrate a lot of that work by like moving the physical body. It does things that nothing else can do, I believe, to kind of like back to the heart-mind connection. Like it can tie stuff together and make those connections for you, and then afterwards you're like, oh wow, I feel so much more like one piece rather than all these things running around inside of me. So I often get that feeling, and I think that's, you know, one of the bigger benefits I experience with yoga.
Yeah.
Maybe you experience something similar.
I do, and I think a really important piece of that is that you're coming back, the purpose of the mat. You have your yoga mat, and you can take it anywhere. And the purpose of that, to me, is that you're coming back to a consistent spot. Whether you're at the park or whether you're at somebody's house or on the other side of the world, if you have your yoga mat, you're coming back to that spot, that you're building yourself a foundation of, in the body, in the heart, in the mind, of connecting all of those things, no matter the chaos that you've experienced throughout the rest of the week. You're bringing it all back into this one point of alignment within yourself, and then you can, you know, go about your day from there. But it's so important to get that alignment. Ideally, I mean daily. Well, ideally, whatever works for you, truly. Mm-hmm. For me, I have to do it daily. One way I fill my cup is I do yoga damn near every morning. I do probably a 15 or 20 minute little sun salutation after I use hape. You know hape?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, hape is a tobacco-based plant powder blend that gets blown up the nasal passageways, either through somebody else or self-applied. And it's I use it for prayer and for grounding and for meditating, and it can be really powerful stuff. So I like to use that for a few minutes before I start my yoga sequence, and then yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it's super clearing out experience. It's great. It's been I think about 2 months ago is the last time I experienced hape, and it was a great experience. All kinds of snot and stuff started coming out afterwards. And
did somebody else serve it to you, or
he did? Yeah.
Okay.
He was pretty experienced. It'd been a while since I'd done it, and I just let him administer it, and it was great.
Doing it for myself every day, applying it to myself every day is one thing, and when you get somebody else who uses their breath to apply this medicine into your space, it is a whole different animal. I had a friend of mine serve me hape one time, and I was throwing up. I had snot and everything. But when I apply it to myself, it's just like it's a good grounding, calming meditation. Sometimes there's a little bit of spit, but you know, it's so different when that combined energy happens. You're able to move a lot more through.
Yeah. I think that speaks to the power of support from someone besides yourself. You know, I think we can take ourselves certain places, and there's other places we can go to in connection with someone else that is difficult, if not impossible, to go to by ourselves. Not to get too off track, we'll bring it back to this thread, but you know, I've recently come into a new romantic connection the last couple of months.
Yeah.
And it's like my first like full-on like partnership that I've been in with someone. You
Congratulations.
Thank you. It feels really good. And you know, I've dated around a bit before this, and you know, dated girls for a few months. I had a distance connection with someone for, I would say, more or less around a year before, and you know, I learned a lot from those experiences, and I'm still connected to some of those women, and I'm super grateful for, you know, everything I got to experience with them. And you know, and now to be in like a full-on aligned partnership with someone is a whole new experience, because up until this point, you know, the first 30 years of my life, more or less, I felt single. And
whether
now,
you were with somebody or not?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I dated around a bit, but it was never something where I truly felt like in partnership with someone, like I'm really, like we're in this together. Like we're really doing this thing together, and we're walking this path together. This is the first time I felt that on like a holistic level. Wow. Like a whole being level, and it's a new experience for me, and honestly something that it's still like dropping in as like a part of my identity. Like, wow, I'm not single anymore. Like I am in partnership with this other person. And already in these 2 months, like there's been so many ways that I've been lifted up and provided the space to grow in ways that I otherwise was not able to by myself. You know, at the end of the day, like I said, we still have our own mutual sovereignty, and there's a certain power in connection with someone else that I can grow in ways that otherwise are very difficult, if not, impossible to grow in those ways. So it's been a really beautiful unfolding so far, and there's so much more to come still, but I just really that really brought that out of me when you shared about like your friend facilitating that hot bay with you, and just the power of bringing someone else's energy into the mix, and that synergy, like, you know, 1 + 1 equals more than
greater
just 2.
Than the sum of its parts, right? Where I don't know where that comes from, but I like it.
Yeah.
Greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah, we can do a lot more if we're all in something together, you know, including on a greater scale when it comes to government and all that. Like you're talking about your experience trying to exist as a government. That must have been hard, because everybody's got their own ideas of what it's supposed to be and their own agendas, and we're not like, I don't know, maybe a better way to do it is be like, look around at the world, look at the problems, look at the direction the problems are going, and then maybe figure out something from there, instead of like trying to patch the problems or uphold these ideas that are from generations previous to us. Like things need to be a certain way because that's how they are. No, that's some dumb shit. That's called insanity, right? I'm doing the same thing and expecting it to work out when it's not working out.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why things are happening, or why we're doing certain things the way we are, and I think that everything should be open to scrutiny to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Perhaps certain values that we hold, that we have held for a long time, are important, and maybe we do want to continue holding those values, you know, and maybe other values we want to shift, or maybe even those values that we want to hold, maybe we shift how they're expressed, maybe we shift how that shows up for us. I think that, like one of the biggest issues perhaps that is holding us back is we are either so tied to how things have been that we want to just keep things the way that they are, more of like the conservative side of things, or we think that everything is so broken we need to get rid of it all and start from scratch.
Like there's no in-between space.
Yeah, and you know, and we see these extremes playing out at once, and you know, I think there's truth in both sides, and I think the extremes of both sides are not where we're going to ultimately find the answer. I think both perspectives are needed. I think it is important to keep certain values and maintain certain systems that more or less work for us, but maybe there is better ways. And, you know, I think there's others that's like, this piece is so broken at this point that we need something like much better. Like we need to completely recreate the foundation of this, because this building is no longer even stable because the foundation is so like it's went through a few earthquakes, like it's not even stable. Maybe we do need to like just level that specific building and start from scratch. Certain
things like a good example of that would be specific what do you call it, government agencies. I'm not going to name any in particular because I don't have an idea of what would be good to get rid of or to keep, but I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of completely get rid of police. I think that's a little pretty short-sighted right there. But it doesn't mean we don't need to change the way that the police operate and the way that they get trained and things like that. So right now it seems to me like if the collective human mind, it seems like it's like a bowling ball and it's rolling down this fucking slick thing and it can't be stopped because you can't chase it all the way down there, and you have the bumpers up instead of the gutters. Like we have gutters, we could derail this motherfucker if we keep doing what we're doing, but if you have the bumpers seem to be like the conservatives on one side, the liberals are the bumper on the other side, or whatever you want to call these things. It's like these far ends of the spectrum where one thinks that we need to keep it exactly the same way, the other's like, oh no, we need to change the whole thing. There's a middle ground. We have to find that middle ground. In order to find the middle ground, we need to take that bowling ball that is our head, our logic, and we need to lighten it. We need to lighten it. And it can be lightened through the heart. So if you focus on the heart and focus on actually listening to what the heart is trying to express, then the head will lighten and we'll find that middle ground together. And I don't know what that looks like, and none of us do yet. But I think doing the work in sitting with the self and filling the cup first is where it's at. Nothing's going to get solved if we don't feel complete in our own personal sovereignty, in our own life. So instead of trying to put patches and Band-Aids on other people and what they're doing wrong and what they should be doing right, that's not the way. That's digressing. That's like backpedaling. So focusing on personal sovereignty seems to be the most crucial thing for so many people right now.
Yeah, that, and I think tied with listening, like deep listening. I think that when I see a lot of conversations that have happened over the last number of months and today, that's one of the biggest gaps that I see is there's not enough people listening deeply. There's a lot of people who are very gung-ho about expressing their cause and their perspective, and I think that is valuable to a degree when properly balanced with deep listening and a desire to understand, and not coming from a belief that the other person is inherently bad, wrong, or evil. Because I think when someone shows up with that belief, it's near impossible to find common ground and to actually create the change that's going to sustainably work for everybody. If we just, like the example you brought up earlier, see all police as bad and wrong and evil and all cops are bastards, like...
Yeah, you haven't met all cops. You probably haven't met most cops.
I think it's quite the assumption. I haven't. I definitely can't make that judgment call.
I've met a lot of police officers. I was well on my way to becoming a police officer in my youth, and I've met plenty of them. And most of the what I saw at that time was what I was existing in, which is operating off of the beliefs that I was handed, and the way things should be as I was handed. But if I feel into those people as individuals, like they want to help, they're here to help. Let's help them help us.
Yes, and let's trust in their highest, deepest intentions. Let's trust that they, in general, want to show up to be of service, and that they're playing a role. Let's look even beyond the human and ask, like, what is the role of police and policing? It's to keep law and order. It's to protect people. It's to keep things safe. Now, is that going to show up perfectly? No, absolutely not.
Just because something's a law doesn't mean that it's just.
Yeah, the laws themselves might not be the best. They could use some improvement. The people themselves are people, let's remember, just like you and me, who have flaws and don't always act perfectly.
Trying to fill their cups.
They have to experience potential death every single day. They're thinking, I want to go home to my family tonight. They might have had a number of near-death experiences. I don't know what that specifically is like. They may have been shot at. They may have been shot themselves. And they may not be in the best mental or emotional state, knowing that each time they go out there, when someone opens up their car door or their house door, they don't know what's behind that door. And they're not sure what is going to happen in a split second. They have to always be on their toes. And I am doing my best to hold a space of compassion around that, while at the same time saying we can do better. We can do a lot better. Yeah. There's definitely ways that we can improve how we're screening people, how we're training people, investing in that. I heard someone talk about, if a cop hasn't laid their hands on someone in, let's say, 1 or 2 years, and now they have to physically restrain someone, they're probably not going to be very good at it. And they're probably going to use excessive force because they're so scared that they're not sure if they can overpower that person. Especially there's cases where if someone's on some kind of drug, you can shoot them with a taser multiple times and they won't affect them. They'll keep going. That is scary. Or if someone is reaching into their car you don't know what they're about to grab.
True.
You unfortunately sometimes have to assume the worst. And if you've already given them multiple commands and they're not listening to them, who says that they're not going to pull a gun out and shoot back at you? So I think that more compassion and empathy is needed. And, you know, I think there's just a lot more space for mutual understanding. And I think that we need to realize, too, like, if we just take away police, that's very short-sighted. Yeah. What's going to happen? Who's going to take law and order? Oh, well,
gangs,
you see that in New York City. Look how much the homicide rate has gone up if you've been following it. It's like skyrocketed. You know, there's so many more deaths and murders and, you know, all of that and crime happening because there isn't that constant police presence to deter that. Like, that's a very real thing that is proven to work. And you take that away, then someone else is going to take that up who probably is even less trained and has less the best interests of other people in mind.
Yep.
You know, that kind of sucks being a cop, that you have to kind of play the bad guy. You have to play, like, if you're not obeying and you continue to, like, the law has to be enforced at some point up to the point of death.
Yeah, for self-preservation.
And if we don't have that, our whole society turns into chaos, because then anything goes, and who's going to protect? I think it's a nice idea of community policing, and I think there is a lot of ways that we can prevent this.
But
you're not we've seen examples of that too, like in the, what was that, like, zone that they had, the autonomous zone
in Seattle,
I think, like,
I don't remember its name, but
I don't know. It's like
there's no accountability, though, is the issue. There needs to be self accountability first and then community accountability, not negating the police, because if you're a police officer and you haven't laid your hand on somebody in 2 years, congratulations, you're a good fucking cop. But you might be out of practice when it comes to, you know, physically handling somebody. So
I love one recommendation I heard. I forget exactly which podcaster it was from, but he was like, we should have martial arts training on a regular basis for all law enforcement.
It should be a requirement. I think the entry point should be a purple belt in jiu-jitsu is the one that I've heard the most.
Yes.
If you're not a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, you can't be a cop. I like that a lot. I've done maybe 8 months of jiu-jitsu, and purple belts, man, they could probably fuck up most people that walk around. And the cool thing about that is that they're balanced, because it forces you to stay humble and to stay in your body, stay grounded, really.
Yeah. So we, again, that kind of ties back to the whole, you know, the system, like it's humans in a system. We have to remember that. And I think it seems obvious, but I think we forget that it's always humans in a system. So how can we help each human being to better take responsibility for themselves, to show up greater in their own personal sovereignty and integrity and responsibility, and how do we inspire them to want to do the best job that they can do in whatever their role is? And I think that is a starting place, because I think the more people who are in that place, you know, a lot of these cops too, remember, most cops are men who are probably disconnected from their hearts and their emotions. What if our cops, and I've seen this in certain places they're doing this, like having them meditate and having them connect to themselves. Like what if we can bring more heart connection to men in general, especially the ones who are enforcing the law and using potentially lethal force? I think they're going to be a lot more likely to not make these poor decisions about another human being's life, because if they're more connected to their humanity. I think we're so disconnected to our humanity that it makes it very easy to not see the other person as yourself. Like what if I viewed that other person as my brother, and maybe he's going through a hard time and maybe he's a bit unstable, but that's my brother. I'm going to do everything I can to try to address what's going on and help him out. The last thing I want to do is take that man's life. If he's my brother and I feel that and I know that and I care about him. And I think that we're so disconnected most times that, like, that's not the thoughts going through their mind. The only thoughts going through their mind is this person going to be a threat to me? Yeah. And now we're just threatening each other, and now we're just enemies, rather than, you know, we are friends and allies, and someone might be going through a hard time, and we need to protect ourselves in case that person can't control what they're doing, but at the end of the day, I care about you, I love you, I want to support you, and find the best solution so that, you know, you're going to be okay, and that you can heal, and that you can be better.
And nobody has to get shot, and you do have a better life because you're healing, because I have your best interest at heart, truly, in integrity. And it seems like there's this whole culture of fuck the police, but everybody loves the Jedi Knights.
Huh.
And the Jedi Knights are the ideal archetype of justice and of balance. They meditate. They are, I guess, politically active. They know their place in balance and integrity and in justice and in wisdom. Wisdom seems to be something that's in lack because it's, I mean, on a collective level, it seems to be in lack. But there's individual police officers who are wise, who carry that wisdom, who walk in that space. That, like, how do we build a bridge from today's fuck the police to becoming Jedi Knights? That's like, that's the direction I would go. You mentioned meditation, and a lot of people would laugh at that. Those people probably don't know about meditation. And the Jedi meditate.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like too read up on my Star Wars, you know, history and everything, but
I'm deep in it.
I'm sure they go very deep in their training to become a Jedi, right? They probably go through a number of initiations, and like they have to pass certain trials and you know, refine their character in certain ways, and they're picked because they have certain qualities as well, right? Am I kind of on point there?
Yeah.
So far, yeah. I think one of the things, let's say specifically as men, that we miss out on, and this goes for women too, but I know more on the men's side of things, is we have lost, in a lot of ways, initiations we used to go through in prior times, in prior cultures. And so we don't have this collective connection and rite of passage with each other that we used to have. And that's why I think things like men's work is so important in men's circles, or plant medicine journeys is another initiatory process that think it can be very valuable to a lot of people in connecting with the deeper parts of themselves, stepping up into their greater callings. On the most recent plant medicine journey that I experienced, the two biggest themes that came up for me, one we already talked about, which is sovereignty. That was one of the two big themes that came up for me stepping in a greater way into my sovereignty and holding that space for others to do the same. And then the second one was guardianship. Really guarding that which is important and sacred, and being a protector. And I think that is a very masculine trait that is oftentimes misconstrued, and I think unfairly criticized. You know, in a way, like our police are protectors. At least that's their ultimate goal. And it's unfortunate that we only single out the few times that they don't do a good job, or that they make the wrong decision. You know, that's going to happen. When you look at the data and stats, which I won't go into because I don't have it on hand, but I've read enough of it that kind of my feeling on that, my overall analysis is that it's actually very, very low that that police are showing up and making the wrong choice. When you look at all cases, all interactions, all matters, all deaths, it's actually very, very few. I think it's something like in 2019, and again, I might be misquoting, but it's around like 10 unarmed black men were killed by police in 2019. Yes, every life is important, and that's like a very small number.
That is a very small number. I don't even know if I could like believe that. You said 10, somewhere around 10?
It was very unbelievable to me, but I read through multiple sources. Yeah, like 10 unarmed. You know, there's a lot more that like were armed, but it's like, again, I think one of the bigger issues here, let's take a step back even from that and say we need to realize that every situation is very unique. Every situation is very unique and has a lot of nuance in it. And I think we are hurting ourselves by generalizing things too much. You know, a lot of those, like, you don't know the situation. Maybe it was someone who was a very violent criminal, drug trafficker, like whatever it is, even that's judgments, right? But like, you know, who intended to cause harm to the people around them, and it was actually in the best interest that they were, you know, subdued. We don't know that because every single situation is so unique.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is lost when we get too far into generalizations. And I think
it's also got to be hard working from a particular protocol, and then also having your humanness fill your boots. And so you got to adhere to a protocol, protect the people, protect yourself, and still serve justice at the end of the day. It sounds like a complex thing.
Yeah, and I think that's why you know, I really understand the sentiment of fuck the police. I understand it. And I can get down with, I think, you know, one of the threads there that like, yeah, like stop unfairly killing people that shouldn't be killed, or doing it out of malice or out of a lack of care and compassion, and just doing it because, you know, you are rooted in some kind of hatred or a lack of justice, or you know that you won't be held accountable so you can get away with stuff. Like, that's fucked up. We should not be doing that. Absolutely. And I think when taken to an extreme, when we lose all respect for police and law enforcement, that is a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
And that creates a whole nother much bigger set of problems, I believe, than the previous one. And I think we have made a number of really great strides. That's another unfortunate sentiment I often see, is like, oh, we haven't made any progress in 50 years or in 400 years. I think that's bullshit, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think we have made a lot of progress, and there's more to be made, and there will always be more to be made. I think we need to find the balance of what is the progress we have made, how far have we come, look how many, you know, black people, which is still, I think, an unfair generalization. You know, this is coming from listening to a lot of black presenting people talk about this too, and kind of dispute that. It's like, when you say Black Lives Matter, that is such a blanket statement that can almost be insulting in itself, because now you're saying that all black people are the same, which they're not. Every black person is different. Some black people don't even come from Africa. They're not even African American.
Yeah.
You know, so and there's so many different skin tones. And what about multicultural people?
Yeah.
Like, I would probably be considered white presenting, but I'm half Arab. You know, it's like every person is so unique, and I think one thing that I would love to see more of, again, is this back to this conversation about personal sovereignty and personal responsibility.
Yeah.
I think when taken too far, something like that movement can...
Which movement?
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Can lean too much into victimhood.
Yeah.
Can lean too much into giving up your power, which is just an unfortunate thing.
Because it's rooted in taking your power back, right? And standing up for yourself.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it can go overboard and become a victimization tool.
When you start blaming too many people, I think identifying issues and identifying problematic areas is important. And I think generalizations can be important to a degree of evaluating things. And I think that at the end of the day, every person needs to learn more personal responsibility. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, you know? And those who have more need to do a better job of looking out for those who don't have the same support systems, who don't have the same type of connection and community.
Greater power. With greater power comes greater responsibility. Same with greater privilege, if that's the box you want to put someone into. With greater privilege maybe comes greater responsibility. You know, if you have a microphone, use that motherfucker to the best of your ability.
That's right.
Oh man, there's a book. I wanted to drop this in a little bit ago. There's a book that I have listened to on audio maybe 3 or 4 times. It's called The Way of the Superior Man. And that have you read that book?
I've read about half of it. I understand the concepts.
Oh, that book is wonderful to me.
David Data is great.
The very first thing that they say in that book is stop waiting for the completion of anything in life. So there's this idea in the collective that we're going to make it. We're going to get to this plateau and everything's going to be cool. And we're just going to be able to settle down and relax back into our comfort. But that's not true. That's not true. Like you said a few minutes ago, it's always progressing and it's always going to be changing. We're going to constantly continue. We're going to keep needing to adapt. adapt to each other and adapt to the changing aroma of the world. And I think that it's really important to hold, and for me to walk with, is to don't wait for the completion of something in order to keep doing the work. But that doesn't mean don't complete your work.
Yo. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, right, because it's a moving target, you know. Everything's a moving target. If you're living your life waiting for an outcome, it's a moving target.
Yeah.
There's milestones, and let's celebrate those milestones. And I think that was my point of we have made progress. Let's celebrate the progress we've made. Let's celebrate the milestones that we've reached. And let's keep improving, and let's keep getting better, and let's keep identifying the biggest weak spots in our society and in ourselves, and really sit with those and cultivate the qualities it would take. Like, who would I have to become so that problem becomes irrelevant? I think a lot of the issues that we're trying to fight will never be solved in the ways we're trying to fight them, because that's not where the solution ultimately lies. I think that to a degree, shining the light on certain incongruencies and inconsistencies and problems in our society is an important step in the process. But once you shine the light on the wound, it doesn't help to keep poking it, or just like, you have to start healing, and you have to create an environment for healing to occur. When we see a big wound, like, we need to ask ourselves, what is the remedy? What is the medicine that this wound needs? Not, let me show you how big of a wound this is and how much it hurts. We know it hurts at this point. We know that's a wound. We know that's a problem. Nobody's denying that. I'm not saying that Black Lives Matter isn't a huge issue. It absolutely is. And I take that with a deep reverence and respect and appreciation that I don't understand certain people's struggles and what they've had to go through. And I take that with an even deeper dose of humility, because I am in hip hop now. I am a rapper. So
I am in hip hop.
I don't know why I said it like that.
I like that.
Obviously, I'm white.
Half Arab, though.
Half white, half Arab. But, you know, obviously I'm not black, but I'm stepping into a predominantly black-centered culture, and doing it in a way, in my best attempt to do it authentically. And because I resonate with the core message of hip-hop, which in my interpretation is the overcoming of struggles.
Okay.
The overcoming of struggles. That's a lot of what I hear in there. And yes, there's all different shades, but like, when I really look at the roots and the core of like what I would consider, and what a lot of people might consider really good hip hop, it's overcoming your struggles and creating a better life for yourself, and inspiring others to do the same. That's what I get out of it, at least. So I can't speak to anyone else, but that's what I get out of hip hop, and that's what I connect. Like, it's a transformational art form, which maybe most people wouldn't speak about it in those terms, but that's what I see. It's like they're speaking their better reality into existence in a way.
Well, that's where it comes back to the deep listening, it seems, is because it's not about fuck the police, but if you listen to the words, it might sound like it's about fuck the police, but if you in a sense, but if you listen deeply to it, it's more about the overcoming of the struggles, and this is what I did to get there, this is the work that I put in, this is how I took my personal sovereignty seriously and overcame the obstacles that were put in front of me. And I'm not even a huge like hip hop rap culture person, but I've been getting into 50 Cent more. I like it. His music feels good to me. Earlier you mentioned you can understand the fuck the police sentiment, and I think my version of that is not fuck the police for who they are, or what they're doing, or what their intention is, but fuck the police because fuck the laws that they are required to enforce. There's a lot of laws that exist that I think can be dissolved, and we can make new ones. Or fuck the lack of laws that protect people in the ways that they need to be protected by someone who is given a gun and his role is to enforce the law. Fuck that. Fuck the system not
being set up in a way that protects the people who it's meant to protect in the ways that they are wanting to be protected. And I think that's ultimately the deeper sentiment of a movement like Black Lives Matter, is like, why are we afraid to a degree of the people who are meant to protect us?
Yeah.
And like, fuck yeah, like 100%, like that sucks, and that's a horrible incongruency and inconsistency. And there's incongruencies and inconsistencies in all systems. In religion, you see that. In all areas of our society, you see that. I just hope that we can continue to broaden our scope and expand our perspective to kind of put those things in perspective and realize, it's fuck the police because we don't feel safe. Fuck the police because we want to create a better life for ourselves, and there seem to be a greater amount of barriers in our way, and we don't have the similar level of support that we need to get there, and there seem to be other people, for the way that the system's set up, whose role it is to hold us back more than others. And I think, again, that all has to come back to, how can I help each person? Like, how can each person be supported? Again, back to another concept you brought up earlier of hunger. Like, we all have these hungers inside of us. How am I looking to be fed? In what ways am I starving? That might be for actual food. That might be for, a house, a roof over my head. That might be for physical protection.
Maybe a men's circle for emotional support.
I might be emotionally starving. Men kill themselves at a rate much, much higher than women. That's something that's rarely ever talked about. That's a whole topic in itself we could get into, but that ties back into our whole emotional and men conversation, is like, these men have no way to express themselves and their emotions, that they bottle it all up till it builds, and they have nothing left to do but to take it out on themselves. And so they don't know where else to direct it, all that pain.
So much of these men that are killing themselves are because they don't feel like they have an answer or an option or a support system. And so many of these people are the guardians. They're supposed to be the guardians, but they don't have a support system to process what it is that they have to do. And it's just not a system that supports them on like a mental and a emotional health level.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, I asked, what's a way that you fill your cup? And I think yoga a couple times a week was what you said. Is there another way that you go about doing that? You mentioned plant medicines. You do that on a regular interval?
That's not a regular thing for me. That's a very occasional thing when I feel like I need that. But for me, for more of my consistent, ongoing self-care practices, yoga, I will meditate from time to time when I feel like I need that. Literally just eating good food that resonates with my body. I eat actually a really kind of heavier meal for breakfast that really gets me a lot of energy through the day. I usually have like a light shake in the afternoon, like some vegan protein powder with a really good green superfood powder and some maca powder. And then in the evening, I'll eat kind of like a lighter dinner usually. So just like eating good food consistently supports me. It's changed. I'll go running or even just walking around my neighborhood a few times a week. A lot of these practices used to be daily practices for me for a while. At this point, they're more like maintenance practices at this phase of my life. I used to do yoga every day. I used to meditate every day. I used to run every day at certain phases of my life. And now I kind of just weave those in as I feel like I need them. That's just kind of currently where I'm at. Maybe next month I'll be running every day again. Who knows? But I think, just giving myself time to think, giving myself time to chill out and relax and disconnect my mind is really important. Just lying on my bed or sitting on my couch, or even, though it's partially unhealthy, just scrolling through social media sometimes, seeing some of my friends' posts, reading a few things, finding a piece or two that inspires me can sometimes be a supportive practice. It can be taken too far sometimes, but it can also be supportive.
That's where the listening comes in for balance, right?
Which I, even last night, like I spent a little too long on social media and felt kind of shitty afterwards, but you know, you live and you learn, and you do the best you can each day. The other practice that's regular for me, that for me is really supportive, is I freestyle rap. I have like a group of my friends that we get together every week right now over Zoom, and we'll put on some beats and we'll like come up with some topics, and then we'll just like go for like an hour or two. And that has been a really good processing tool for me. And the space we create is like a really free flow, open space with like a transformational intention in it, so that anything from light to dark can show up and it's safe to be expressed. That's like another safe space that we've created, where like all expression is welcome and won't be judged, and you're allowed to just show up in that. So that's another practice that has kind of combines expression and like kind of a men's work, group work kind of feel to it, that's been really supportive. Or sometimes I'll just freestyle on my own, like in my car or in my room, and use that as kind of like a processing tool. If I just had a deep conversation or just went through like an intense experience, I'll use that to kind of just like run the energy through my system and just like kind of keep myself clean and integrate some of the things that I learned from that experience I just went through.
Yeah, right on.
So yeah, that pretty much covers my regular practices. Well, and then my connecting with my romantic partner, I'd say, is another now regular practice that you know, keeps my cup filled as well. You know, I think intimacy and physical touch is super important, and something that probably especially a lot of men don't get enough of. You know, even when I am, you know, physically around my male friends, which doesn't happen as often right now, you know, we'll hug each other, we'll touch each other, like we're a bit more touchy-feely than maybe men are supposed to be. But like it feels good just to like have that just like friendly touch too, like different kinds of touch, I think can be valuable and healing and important to have on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think they're super necessary. I think that's one part of the masculinity thing that's overlooked in general, is because it gets projected into the masses as like this thing where like, oh, men just want this or just want that. It's like, no, biologically, physically, we crave and need physical connection with people, whether it's sexual or not. And it can get demonized a lot of the time, because there's not in the throughout my life, I suppose, there's not been a clear enough set of boundaries or definition or a clear conversation with other people about like, well, what's okay, what feels comfortable, until the point where like it whittled me down to like nothing's comfortable. Hugs are uncomfortable. Looking at people can be uncomfortable. Well, how do I work through that? I don't know. Do I ask, can I hug you? Can I touch you? Can I like what do I do? What do a lot of these men do, especially when vulnerability isn't there? You can't put yourself out and to be vulnerable and say, you know, I really feel like I want to hug you. Can I hug you? That's a vulnerable thing to say, especially to somebody you're not tight with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also beautiful, I think, because, you know, one, me and all of my male friends are very much about consent, and really we're about consent culture and creating consent culture. And that's another thing about the whole safe space thing, is I want to be a safe space wherever I go. For everyone. For anyone. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and especially in a world where, you know, especially the more powerful men, at least, are the ones who we can see this most clearly in, abuse their power in certain ways, and abuse their masculinity in a lot of ways, in such that a lot of women do not feel safe around men in general. And that's unfortunate. And it's also understandable. Like what women as a collective have gone through, the suppression of men in general. Again, these are all generalizations.
Suppression from men over women.
Yes, men suppressing women in very, you know, easily seen ways in our society, as well as a lot more unconsciously, like a lot more subtle ways as well. It's understandable that women feel the way they do, and I don't have an issue with that in and of itself. And my desire is that we can together, men and women, again, this is a generalization there, I fully acknowledge there is a spectrum of gender identity, and you know, I'm using this to just make my example a little more easy to digest, but you know, men and women, my desire is that we move more and more towards unification and healing and understanding. And, you know, what I can do is I can show up and be a safe space for women to be around, and be easy to be around, and not exhibit a lot of the behaviors that we might describe as toxic masculinity. You know, but to show up as an example and a model of what it looks like to embody these qualities that, again, I don't think are even totally gender specific, but like the qualities that we all want to embody so we can get along better. So that's kind of what I mean by safe space as well, is just showing up in a way that no matter who I'm around, they feel safe being around me, safe being more vulnerable perhaps than they're usually able to be in the other parts of their life. And that's the intention that my closest male friends show up with as well. And I hope we continue to see more of that. That's definitely what I'm putting out into the world, and a lot of the men that I connect with are attempting to do as well. And I hope that for women's sake and for all of our sake, that we see more men step up and show up in a way that is deeply respectful of women and supportive of them, and ultimately is showing up as who we want to see as like the new masculine that will, you know, more and more be able to embrace their power and create change and run the world in a way that is for the highest good of all people.
Run the world. I don't. Hold the structure. Hold the structure.
It's an interesting phrase. I know. Even when it came out, I use that because that's the old paradigm of how we talk about it. But to be guardians.
Yeah, to hold the structure.
To hold the structure of the earth.
For the canvas to be painted on. Be the canvas to allow the expression of everything else inside of this place. Damn, I was gonna say something, I forgot it. Okay, so in the spiritual community, the quote-unquote spiritual community, there's a lot of this stuff about like being safe and comfortable and holding a safe space for women to be vulnerable. And I think that those channels get crossed too frequently. Sorry, Mr. Bikram, but you're going to be another sample example. Your yoga is divine, but the rest of it is, you know, the wires get crossed when you're trying to create a safe space for a woman, but it actually dips into, oh, this could be for me. I could get something out of this. Oh, now she feels safe with me. Now maybe I can, you know, touch her or something. Yeah, maybe you can touch her, but maybe it's not from the right place. Maybe you shouldn't be trying to hold space for a woman if you don't feel like you can comfortably touch her without it being sexual. And that's something that seems to exist in the spiritual communities, as I have kind of like dipped my toes into different pools of that here and there. I see it a lot. I feel it a lot. You know, I've experienced it myself. I've been that guy in some light ways. Like, not like I haven't done anything like Bikram status or. I don't know. I don't like using that guy as an example. He's just another person. But
I get what you're getting at, though.
Yeah, like something that we all want to be really careful of, especially as women going into those communities, feeling like these men are here to be trusted and to be leaned on and safe. There are those men. Those men exist here, and those are the guardians. But there are other men too that are not those men, that are trying to fill those roles, and take some discernment to just take baby steps, go slow, see how it feels, and make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Just be cautious.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic, you know, and it's one that sits very close to my heart as I would consider myself like a community builder, a space creator, and, you know, creating spaces that women and men can step into and feel safe. And I definitely have seen what you describe, and I think there's a lot of examples of that out there. And, you know, I've experienced those challenges myself, you know, to be, you know, very vulnerable. In my business at one point, there was a girl who worked with us that was an awesome employee, and she showed up and worked really hard and brought a great energy to the team. And I really enjoyed working with her. And, just spending time with her, and I definitely had some feelings for her. And it appeared that she possibly might as well, like she might have reciprocal feelings. And there was a moment where we kind of talked about it, like.
But you're the boss, right?
I'm the owner,
Uh-huh.
and she was an employee, and I felt very uncomfortable about just the fact that that was the dynamic. Even though my heart felt really good about the connection, and it appeared very likely that there was a mutual resonance there. And at one point, she essentially even gave me the opportunity and like invited that in, and at least to explore that and to lean into that. And I froze. Like, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't say yes to that because I felt like it would have been too difficult to cleanly manage that type of connection. And, as much as she had a certain degree of confidence and I had a certain degree of confidence that we had a level of maturity that we could hold both spaces, I guess at least at that time I didn't trust myself enough, or it felt too muddy and murky to lean into that I ultimately let the opportunity pass. And on the one hand, I'm really proud of myself for standing in my integrity and for standing in the integrity of my business, and continuing to assure that all the women who work with us feel like they have a safe space to show up to work, and there's no weird vibes and no shady things going on, and that they're not feeling uncomfortable. And on the other hand, it sucked, and I betrayed my heart. And that is one of the only times in my life where I have felt an immense degree of regret for quite a while. Like, to be honest, it's probably still with me, at least to a small degree.
Because you felt so connected to her?
I felt like there was definitely something there, and something that I had been looking for a while, and I never got the chance to explore that. And that's unfortunate, and it was definitely a betrayal of my heart. And I think that kind of speaks to the bigger conversation around men and our emotions. It's like, I don't think I'm unique in that I had to make this choice between my, logical, masculine, structure holding side of myself and my emotions and my heart. It's like it was an either or choice is what it felt like at that time, because, at my level of development, I couldn't see the possibility of both happening very likely. It seemed like the most likely thing is that it would have been a mess, and it would have ultimately been more trouble than it was worth, and would have ultimately, it could have negatively affected the long term of the business and the people who work for me, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice that, but I had to make the very hard choice to betray my heart, my personal feelings, in order to ensure the longevity and integrity of my business. So it felt like a lose-lose situation there. I would have a different perspective today, and I hope in the future I can create spaces where both possibilities can exist. I think it has a lot to do with consent and getting very deep into those crossed wires you're talking about, and knowing how to very meticulously be in tune with those, and understand when certain wires are crossed, and being able to have a conversation around that to clean things up very quickly. I think, at some point in the future, I might have that possibility of, being in business with and also being in a romantic partnership with someone at the same time. I'm actually already starting to lean into that a little bit, and it's so far is feeling clean, and kind of just my initial leaning into that. But I think most people are probably not at the maturity level to be able to do both. And the last piece I want to say, and I'd love to hear any reflections you have, is, on kind of the Bikram example, men have sexual desire, and so do women.
Bada bing.
Which seems like a simple thing to say, right? But we both have sexual desire, and we both want to have those kind of experiences and connections with each other. And I think too often spirituality and sexuality have this strange relationship where it's either like you should separate them entirely, right? Like this purist mindset of like spirituality and sexuality need to be separate.
It's quite the opposite, I believe.
Or, yeah, but like when you get to the depths of spirituality, it's very tied to the sexual energy. It's very tied to your sexuality.
Life itself exists because of sexuality.
Because of sex, literally.
Yes.
Like, that's like a very pure expression of God and of life and of aliveness. And those energies, the deeper you go, they come from the same roots. So it's like, I think it's a challenge. And that's why at this point, I don't as harshly judge someone in his position, also being a business owner myself and knowing some of the dynamics that happen being a business owner and being around women, and especially like amazing women. Like I'm around amazing women a lot of times, like just in the circles that I run in my business, in the events that we go to, in my coaching that I've started doing. Like I am around some amazing women, and I get it. Like it's hard to not like be a bit overtaken by like the beauty and amazingness and intelligence and like depth that women bring to the table, and so I just like have a deeper compassion and empathy. Not that I support anyone crossing boundaries and violating consent. That's absolutely not what I'm about.
But it's easy to see how mistakes can be made and how it's easy, especially when it comes to biological sexuality. You know, mistakes are made, and it's only a mistake because of the boundaries and parameters that we set for ourselves to keep us in our integrity. Those lines are crossed. Those lines can be crossed,
and it's easy to judge on the outside when you have no actual knowledge or experience of what occurred there. Now, do certain things need to be called out? Absolutely. And I think so. I have this concept, and it's probably not unique, but I don't see it out there as much yet. I hope to be an advocate for it. So we have call-out culture, right? Calling people out when they're doing dumb shit.
Careful. People might take...
people
are going to take it too far.
I'll say take it too far. I'm about to provide...
because we can call out the people that take it too far on calling out.
Yeah. There's too many instances. No, you're already a step ahead. I love it. So there's call-out culture, right, where we call people out for doing the wrong thing, or what we judge as doing the wrong thing, which may very well have a depth of validity to it. We also have this thing called cancellation culture, where we think someone is so wrong in something they've done or even just said or even just thought about doing that we cancel them. We say, you are not valid. I'm going to do everything I can to make your life miserable and to make sure that you have the least amount of opportunity to have a successful and happy life. And I'm going to try to cancel you, and I'm going to get the mob, so to speak, to help me out with that, and we're going to cancel you because what you have done is an unforgivable sin.
Which nothing is unforgivable, in truth.
I agree. But then there's this conversation of how do we make reparations for what we do and what is reasonable, and this leads into my concept, which I believe could be a replacement for these, that is an upgrade. You know, I acknowledge there is value in calling people out and canceling people even. I will say there is value in that, and I understand the sentiment of where it's coming from, and I think it's important. And just like the example with the wound, it only does so much to call out the wound, but how are you going to heal it? So the upgrade is call up culture. Call up and call in. Call in and call up culture. Looking at those goosebumps?
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps. I like that. That's really, really beautiful. Do you want to break a little bit of that down? What exactly is, if I did something that was crossing the fucking line and you wanted to call me up for it, what does that look like? Do I have to be willing to step up if you're calling me up?
Yeah, so that's an important distinction. So I think that each person's at their own stage, right? And like each situation is going to be unique, and maybe the best way we can handle certain people and what they've done at a certain time is by calling them out or even canceling them to wake them up to what they've done. And maybe that's the best they can receive at the time, that will actually help them to at least stop the pattern they're doing, right? At least that stops the pattern the best that we can. It stops the continuation of that abuse, of that thing that we've identified that is not beneficial, that is harmful to other people. At least it has stopped the bleeding, to put it like that. Now, those who are ready to heal, which I think you have to be ready and open and receptive to it to a degree, hopefully over time more people see the benefit of it and become more receptive, but I think there is a degree of consent that's required, and willingness is maybe a better word. There's a willingness that's needed to be called in, first of all, to reflect on oneself. Let me reflect on what I've done. You know, I've heard and been called out on these things. Let me reflect on that, and let me really sit with what I've done and how I feel about that in myself. Is that in integrity with who I want to be? Let me sit with what these other people are telling me on how my actions or words or behaviors have affected them.
Okay, so unless the person is willing to be called in, this doesn't it doesn't appear to me like it will work, because it seems, I'll explain what I see.
Yeah.
It seems like on some level the caller outer, the person doing the calling out or the calling up, is deciding somebody else's level of integrity, or deciding like that they're not in their sovereignty. But we're not in our sovereignty. It's not up to us to decide who's in or out of their sovereignty. We might observe that it's taking place, but when or where is it up to us to say that to them? I mean, of course, the responsibility of policing each other on a community, human, social level is very important, but where are the boundaries in that?
Yeah, and there's a lot of intricacies of this, and I'll try to stay like focused on like the core of the idea, and then we can like expand.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to do surgery already.
You're great. I love it. I love the excitement. Cool. So it takes a certain degree of willingness and calling in, so they can sit with that first and foremost. And you know, again, this is assuming they're ready to do that inner work. I think one piece I will add is certain people need more support in order to do that. I think everyone's capable of it, and I think with the right support, just about everyone is even ready for that, I would say. A lot of people probably don't have the right support or tools or experience or awareness and understanding on how to do that, and they might need to have certain other experiences before they can actually go in deep enough to like get to a new place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So this seems to be about accountability.
Yeah.
So helping each other be accountable for ourselves, and for when I step up and ask like, hey Nate, will you help keep me accountable in this arena over here regarding, you know, business or hiring beautiful women as employees because whatever. Like,
let's say, for example, and this is not something I think you would be doing, but like, let's say you consistently are like violating women's boundaries in some way. You're touching them in ways that they don't want to be touched, and let's say even some of these women have either called you out for it publicly or have told me about it privately, and I'm aware of this pattern. Okay. Sorry to put this projection on you.
No, bring it on. But, it's pretty unlikely.
Yeah, I would say
that they wouldn't want to be touched. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
That's all right. We all need a little lightheartedness in these heavy topics.
Okay, so let's say I'm crossing that line and I'm violating women's physical boundaries.
Yes, and this is like a pattern that we notice. It's not perhaps like a one-time thing, but it's like, oh, this is like a pattern. I think that's an important piece too, is that we want to work on things that are like patterns.
Yes.
And they're consistent, so we know it's something that's real. So now I might talk to you privately and be like, hey, bro, like, you know, I saw these people were calling you out. I'm just like checking in. Like, how are you doing? You know, like, how are you, you know, handling that? Like what's good? Like, I'm here to support you is I think the energy that is more ideal to come from, rather than, hey, bro, why the fuck are you, you know, like violating these women? It's like you're immediately on the defensive now, and you're immediately like, I'm your enemy now, and you're just getting attacked, and you're like, well, I'm just going to close off.
Yep.
Now your defense mechanisms are up, rather than like, hey, bro, like, I love you, and like, you know, I've seen you've been taking like a lot of, you know, flack for like, a lot of people have been like putting these, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Not projections, like accusations on you. Like how are you dealing with that? Like how is your heart? How are you feeling right now? Is there any way I can support you in you know, just your experience of that? You know, like, what's going on? Like, I'm curious to know more. Like, if you want to share more, like, I'm here to listen. I'm here to be here for you and hear more if there's any way I can support you in what you're experiencing. So I think that is like one approach that could be taken to kind of get there, you know, and let's say you've gotten to a point where like you're now acknowledging these patterns and you're like, I want to change. I don't know how to. I don't want to be violating women anymore. I maybe even didn't realize I was doing it.
Right.
A lot of the times that's actually what it is. You know?
Yeah.
Either people are unaware that they're doing it, or they're aware that they're doing it, but they don't know a better way. They haven't seen an example, or they don't know how to escape that. So they keep doing it, knowing that it's wrong, feeling the shame of it, but they don't know a better way, and no one has given them the time of day or like the support, the offer of support.
And the compassion to see that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. So, you know, maybe they get support then from a coach of some kind, or maybe like, hey, bro, do you want to like, you know, I know I've been going through a lot lately, and my emotions have been really intense, and like, hey, I'm part of this men's group. Like, would you like to come sit with us? Would you like to come join us? That's another amazing way, is if you already have a space created that you know someone who's dealing with a pattern like that, who has the willingness and desire to overcome it, if they can step into that, you know, safe space, now there's an opportunity as they see 3 other men talk about how they abused women and that they are working to overcome that, or they've made some strides. You're like, hey guys, I actually want to share this thing that's been coming up for me lately. Now for the first time, you get to speak that. You're not holding it all inside. You get to be witnessed in that, which I think is super important. And that in itself, just speaking that and have other people receive that and just say like, thank you for sharing. Like, that in itself can be very healing and very important, and a step forward in the process. And then you have a support system that now you can follow up with those other 3 men. Like, hey, I would love to hear like what your approach has been. Like, what have you tried that has helped you to progress in this area? Because I want to become a better man. I want to show up better for women and want them to feel safer in my presence. You know, and I have the strong desire to connect with them, and I think women are beautiful, and I want to connect with them, and I can't help that, and I don't want to deny that part of myself, and I want to do it in a respectful way, and actually get consent, mutual consent, so we can both get more of what we want. So I think that's like a starting place.
That's
so
great.
The calling in and then the calling up. That's like the calling
that's beautiful.
up.
So the person themselves, the individual, has to be ripe for this in a way. They have to have they have to be willing to put themselves into that space of accountability, whether it's a men's circle or a therapist, and they have to be, like you said, calling, and they have to be willing to look at themselves with where they're at in truth. And if that's not there, then it doesn't seem that it'll work. So it's like you have the logic, emotion, the head and heart coherence. When the head and heart coherence happens through the daily practices to establish the sovereignty, then you can go into the circle of community and tribe to have the accountability necessary to make the changes in vulnerability that need to happen in order to change the way that life comes at you, or the way that you respond to it. That's awesome. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think you described that. You laid that out pretty well.
Cool.
Yeah,
that the community piece, the accountability, and the other support seems to be a huge factor in all of this.
Yeah, and you know, and this is just, you know, I'm not part of this community, but what I've heard in listening to different discussions, you know, on both sides around like what are some solutions, for example, for like Black communities, it's like more support, more community support, more like, you know, Black men lifting each other up. You know, I've heard certain conversations in hip hop around how, you know, a lot of hip hop music can be about like bringing each other down and trying to one up each other and trying to have, you know, the better car, the better jewelry, the better women, and like it's just like tearing each other down. And this isn't just Black culture either. This is all culture, and this is more of a masculine thing, I would say, is like men trying to one up each other and trying to be better and trying to tear each other down to feel better about ourselves.
Yeah, women do it too, for sure.
Women definitely do it too in their own way. But yeah, like how can we call each other up? How can I say, yo, Andrew, I love your podcast, bro. Like, I'm super stoked about it. Rather than being jealous, it's like, I love what you're doing there. I would love to come and support that and be a part of it and have conversations. And like, hey, I'm like starting my own podcast too. Like, I would love for you to come on my podcast so that we can have more of these conversations.
Yeah.
And like, oh dude, I love that you're making the most money you've ever made in your life. That's awesome, dude. So, like, what can you share with me on what's helped you to get there?
So collaboration over competition.
Yes.
Collaboration will bring abundance, and competition will bring division.
Yeah. I think competition
is healthy in a way.
It can be. I think a lot of competition and how it shows up in our society is built off of a scarcity model.
Yeah.
That there's not enough, and that in order for me to succeed, you have to lose.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the truth of how the world actually, let's say at least, can work. I don't think that the world has to work like that. Maybe that's how it has worked in the past, and maybe to a degree that is still ingrained and will be for a while, and I'm going to do what I can to explore and lean into a new possibility that there's enough for everyone.
Yeah.
And that we can all take care of each other. Because literally, even right now, the actual resources on Earth is enough to take care of everyone. It's just how it's structured and how we're using it. And, you know, that's a whole nother discussion that I won't get into.
I was just adjusting my seat position to go there. But hey, we don't have to.
Just
that's
to tie it back
a heavy one.
It is. The competition, though, I think is important because competition's fun, right? But I think there's a reframe available around competition. And maybe we'll call it like cooperation or something.
Oh, okay. So, because what came to mind was the calling up, the compete. Like, I'm going to do better than you so that I can see if I can empower you to want to do better than me so that we can improve this whole show.
It's like when they broke the 4-minute mile.
Yeah.
There was like a dozen guys like trying to break this thing, and they kept inching closer to it. It's like, yeah, they were competing with each other, but they were competing towards this common goal to break this 4-minute mile. And as soon as one guy did it, within, I think, a month or two, like another dozen guys did it.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as one of them, you know, they pushed each other, you know, they were racing against each other race after race and just cutting down on that time, but they were making each other better for it.
Yeah.
They weren't tearing each other down. They were making each other better. And it's like, even though, you know, one guy, Roger Bannister, is the name that we know who broke that, it really was all of those men that did that thing, and we should be celebrating all of them. And we you know, him breaking that is representing breaking this barrier that all of us like can celebrate to break.
Because he wouldn't have done that without the competitive nature and without the propulsion of trying to win or do this for the others. But he also opened the door for anyone and everyone to be able to drop in under that 4 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. He was just the torchbearer who happened to get there first. I've heard some rappers talk about this on like podcasts, like. Yeah, like I love, you know, as much as it seems like, you know, me and this one rapper kind of have this beef or like we, you know, we're competing against each other. It's like, they're like, I actually love him and actually appreciate that we make each other better. And, you know, that's ultimately like the deeper place where they're coming from is like they appreciate the competition because it forces them to be on top of their game and to push new edges and push new boundaries. And I think if we can stop trying to tear each other down and actually start moving towards common goals, then, like, you know, if men can come together instead of trying to, like, oh, I'm going to get the most girls or, like, I'm going to, you know, whatever, like, let's all work together to become better men and create safer spaces for women so we can all connect with women in a deeper way that we all desire to and that we trust that, you know, the right connections are available for us and they will show up and we don't have to compete.
Yeah.
The better we take care of all women, the better we're going to be taken care of. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems so simple,
yeah.
But like it just makes sense. And that's my hope for how we can reframe and evolve competition is like, let's compete towards creating a better situation for everyone and for embodying better qualities and ideals that's going to get us more of what we want. So I think that's the reframe that inspires me around that.
That's beautiful. I really like that a lot. Calling up, calling in, instead of calling out. Because calling out, that's so isolating. So here's the spotlight. This guy fucked up. Well, yeah, we all fuck up.
And then how can we take the spotlight that's on certain people we've called out and show like this person did this thing, and let's show you the process of transformation. Let's show you how this person can evolve, how can we hold space for them to become the better version of themselves that we want to see them become and that they want to become? You know, if there are specific reparations that they need to pay towards the people they caused harm, let's be very aware of that, and let's ensure that. And that's the accountability, and that's the penance that maybe you need to pay for the wrongs that you've done and the harms that you've caused, even if they were unintentional. And let's not lose focus of the bigger thing of, let's call this person up to embody the qualities that such a person wouldn't do those things in the first place. If I'm a man of high integrity, I'm not going to do these shady things that someone else who doesn't embody that is going to do, because it's just not a part of who I am anymore. And I'm too connected. I see the consequences of my actions too much. And I just notice it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to do those things. I found something that feels better.
Yeah.
So that's my desire. And I really hope to see, and even more than that, intend with my actions to facilitate more of that, like, call in and call up culture to just be presented. You know, it's not like it's not something, if being done right, that can even be forced on people. It's just like, I want to create a better solution.
Yeah.
And if I genuinely help to create a better solution, people will gravitate towards it and be like, I like this thing. This thing down here worked for a while, but it doesn't feel so good anymore. Yeah. Let me try this thing out at least. Let me at least try this on and hear more of what you're saying and see how that feels. Because something about it, just hearing you speak about it, you know, if anybody listening to this are like, yeah, like that feels like something I want to be a part of, or like something I'd love to see more of in the world, try it out. You know, call yourself in, call yourself up, and get people around you who can help you do the same. That's, you know, be an experiment. Test this out and see if what I'm sharing has some merit. And if it works for you, then great. Keep doing it and share it with the people around you. And that's how things spread. Is, I think, better ideas will spread. Yeah. Better solutions will spread because they're just better all around. And I think I believe that's where we're headed, and I'm going to do everything I can to.
Well, it seems like it's where you're headed, and it seems like it is a really good idea, and it would really, really function. It's important to find that community, to find those people to help hold you accountable, and to define what your needs are and what type of person you want to present as. Who do you want to be to you? Who do you want to be for other people? And then writing that down and making sure that the people that are in your community, your men's circle or whatever it is, that your tight friends, the people you have a close bond with, your family, make sure that they understand who that person is that you are striving to be, so that they can help hold you accountable in the ways that you deem appropriate. So call up culture. Okay, man. So are you doing anything with this anywhere? Have you already, what are you doing with it? Do you have like social media pages or anything for it, or is it just a concept at this point?
I mean, it's maybe not in that terminology. That terminology has come and dropped in very recently, but it's something that me and my closest male friends talk about, you know, about shifting the culture. So we've had conversations just more like one-on-one or in small groups.
Yeah.
I am starting to share more of this type of content on my social media, on my Instagram and on my Facebook. So I just made a post a couple days ago about men, and, you know, I'm planning to share a lot more of this kind of work moving forward. I've also recently stepped into becoming a professional coach. I've been around coaches for close to 10 years now, and have been through various types of trainings and preparations, and have just recently, you know, started my professional practice as a coach. So one of my desires in doing that is to share some of this type of content of the type of work I'm doing with my clients, like on my social media, just for free, so that people can get a taste of the work that I'm doing, the space that I'm in, the people I'm connected to, and you know, hopefully they can take away some gems that will help them in their life, whether or not they, you know, end up working with me or whatever I'm going to be creating in the future. But, you know, so that's probably like the number one place where people can follow more of what I'm doing, is just, you know, at Nathan Coury, NathanCoury on Instagram. You can also follow me on Facebook, just search for my name. But yeah, that's kind of currently where I'm doing it. I have a few other ways that I'm kind of testing these things out, but haven't yet created like a public offering yet on how people can get involved. I intend to create more men's spaces as well as just like creative expression spaces for people in order to have these kind of conversations. I'm also in the process of launching my own podcast. Which
right
I'd love for you to come and join me on sometime.
That would be cool.
So yeah, that will all be kind of announced through my social media. But yeah, that's kind of what I've got going on right now, and probably the easiest way to kind of continue following the threads of some of the things I talked about today.
Very cool. Very cool. This conversation seems like it's been really clear and complete, and I still have plenty of time. If there's anything else that you want to dive into, I'm sure we could go hours with different subjects.
How long are we even going now? Probably been hour and a half, 2 hours maybe?
It's 2:08.
Oh, hell yeah.
So we started, about 2 hours, I think.
Dang.
No way.
Wait. Yeah, because I got here like just before noon.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm almost like 2 hours now.
Cool. We can.
That's awesome. We can go for a little bit longer.
Cool. Any other subjects you want to like jump into? Anything like experimental or exploratory or theoretical that we could slice and dice, pass around, sample?
Yeah. No. Let's see if there's like one more big topic we can touch on.
Well, the one that comes to my mind, the big topic, is the one that we said is heavy earlier, and it talks about the resources of the planet and the stewardship or the guardianship of that. Because you said earlier there's enough resources right now to sustain humanity, right now.
Yeah.
But for how long? I've heard different numbers. I've heard if we keep going at this rate, we got another 20, another 50, 80 years before we're kind of fucked.
Yeah, I think for that I would make the distinction between, when I say there's enough resources to sustain us right now, I mean like if we were to, in kind of more of a, like if we were to redistribute the current resources available, like the amount of food that we're growing. People don't like that.
People don't like that word.
What?
Redistribute.
I know, it's awful.
Communists.
Please don't shoot me.
No. So redistribute. What do you mean when you say redistribute?
So I think there's this misconception of like, there's this weird interplay between like finite resources and like the rate of resource consumption and production, right? So like right now we are on not a great production consumption cycle. Like we are taking more from the earth than we are like reproducing and cultivating,
and waiting for the recycling of the, like, let's use a crop for example. If a crop is harvested once a year, we're consuming it too much and not letting it regrow before we consume it again. That type of thing. Yeah,
like the soils are getting depleted. It's like we are trying to consume faster than nature can naturally like reproduce the richness and nutrient density that would be optimal. It's like
in its own normal way of doing it.
Yeah, which is not to say that like the earth untouched by humans is the ideal either. I'm not saying that. I think that, us interacting with it, it's going to change it. It's going to be different. I'm not trying to return us back to some state we were in thousands of years ago, but I think there is a more sustainable way. Again, that's another word that has all kinds of attached meanings to it, but like there's a more harmonious way that we can live with the earth's resources. And I think this ties back to the conversation around selfishness versus selflessness.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, about how much do you actually need to consume, whether it's food or other stuff. Yeah.
And how effectively are we even using the resources we have? A brilliant insight that I got during a sharing circle after a medicine journey once, someone was talking about how, they were going to go up to receive more medicine, but then right before they did, they tuned into their body and tuned into the medicine that they had already taken. They're like, and they got the message of like, you already have plenty of medicine in your body. And it was a dual meaning. It was one, like, you literally already have enough of this medicine in your body right now that you've already consumed, that you can keep working with that and breathing through that. And you don't need to pile more medicine on top of that. You don't need more sensation and more experience. Like, you have plenty here to do the work that you came here to do, and to really, become more whole and to heal in the ways that you desire to heal. But in a more general sense, it meant, how much medicine do we have in our bodies at any given time that we're not even using?
Breath is my favorite tool, my favorite medicinal tool that is always available to us, that can take you on psychedelic journeys if you breathe enough to do so, or that can calm you down, that can change your physiology, your mindset, lower your blood pressure. So many potentials with what we're walking around as, and not the things that we need to feel a peak experience, to feel like we're doing something awesome. Instead, it's about the peak experience is like the spotlight again, like, hey, here's what this is all the time. Now go pick up the pieces, pick up the places where this isn't existing in your life, and integrate this potential. So there seems to be a lot of getting stuck on the peak experience itself and not actually integrating or putting that in, or recognizing that peak, that feeling of this is amazing, this life is amazing. It's always here, available to us. You don't need the medicine. You don't need to go do ayahuasca to experience that. It might help. Some people might be called to it, but we don't need that inherently. That's God or Gaia or whatever word you want to use for what creates or allows this reality to exist. That's God saying, like, hey, here's a reminder. It's a reminder. Remember who and what you are. It's and those sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Those plants though, those psychedelic plants are also really, really great for reminding us of, like, minimal effective dose. How much do you need to take in order to get done what needs to get done, or to allow the resources to be. Somebody told me once, as a shaman on, like, a, what do you call it, like a nature walk. They were doing this guided nature walk thing, and they were teaching us about the plants. And they're like, when you're harvesting a plant, whether it's a flower for tea or whether it's a fruit from a tree, doesn't matter what it is. You need to do two things. You need to take a certain percentage, but leave more than 50%, or leave, you pick your number, but basically the point is that you're leaving some for it to be able to regenerate itself. And then the other piece is that you need to give something back, whether you give it some water and you just pour a little bit of water on it, but the sense is sacred reciprocity, because the earth provides everything we need, whether we see that or operate in that way or not. The earth provides everything we need, and we need to make sure that we're giving back in that way as best as we can, whether it's just simple gratitude. Gratitude's probably the best way to do it, because I don't know, I can't go, like, I'm not gonna go to a mountain and be like, what can I give you, mountain, to help keep growing plants? Like, that's, I think it's more about the gratitude and reciprocity. But I loved that teaching of balance.
Yeah, that's powerful. That, I think, when you shared about the, leave 50% of the plant, that reminded me of our full cup example. Because what do we usually do, right? Like, we harvest the whole thing. We just pull the whole plant out of the ground and empty the cup completely. It's like, what are we doing? It's like if we cut it off at the stem and we take everything, and then that makes it a whole lot harder for it to regrow. But if you only take what you need, and you take half of the plant there, and then now you leave some for it, and you give it a little bit extra resources, now that plant is going to continue to flourish and actually be able to sustainably grow and continue on its life. We keep, like, cutting life down to its stem, and then get mad when it's not growing back in the ways that we want it to, or fast enough, or whatever. We put all these expectations on it. But
when life gets hard, like, oh, we cut it off at the stem. Why is life so hard? Well, we cut it off at the stem. And if I'm that plant and somebody only takes 40% of my fruit and allows me to, or takes a piece of me and plants me somewhere else, I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to want to produce more fruit. I'm going to want to feed that person that's feeding me.
How much do we actually spend time, like, planting seeds that will help us to continue our growth. It's like we spend all of our time trying to get the most productivity out of ourselves. But I think this is back to the self-care talk. It's like self-care is what you're talking about in my mind.
Yeah.
It's like, how am I taking time to rejuvenate myself and give myself time to regrow, and not just as soon as I have, one flower, plucking that right off again. It's like as soon as one fruit is barely even ripe, I'm like plucking that off to try to consume it. It's like
that's feeding the other hunger, some other false hunger that hasn't been filled.
And that's the other thing is and this is probably good practice for me to even implement more, is asking myself, because I can tend to go towards food because it's a very sensational experience when I'm feeling something kind of hunger inside of me, but maybe stopping and asking myself, like, what is this hunger? Is this really for food, or am I just filling this with food?
Yeah.
Am I really eating this food to like really support my body and my cells and all of that, or am I doing it to avoid another hunger? Maybe I have a hunger for connection, and maybe I need to ask for that connection. Maybe I need to ask a friend to jump on the phone with me for 30 minutes and just hold space for me. Maybe that hunger is for creative expression, and I need to rap, and I need to write, and I need to like make some music. Maybe that hunger is to go make some money and to do more work to bring in more money, and that's going to fill me in a way as well. I think that's the one that is often overfed. We work so much to try to avoid other things. I mean, everyone's got their own poison, right? But it's like, what is this hunger?
Yeah.
And I think way too many times it's like, we try to feed a hunger that will never be satiated by more money or more food or whatever it is, and that's what I'm talking about, to kind of tie it back to this bigger conversation around resources. I wonder, and I don't want to assume, but I wonder how many ultra rich people are trying to fill certain voids of connection and intimacy or creativity and expression with more money, with more work, with more conquering of others.
Yeah.
And it's not doing it, and they keep doing more and more of that, and now they're taking away those vital resources that could be beneficial to other people. And I'm not saying that rich people are bad or that they should give away all of their wealth, because I don't believe that. I think people work hard and in general are stewards of resources because they've earned that and because they know how to manage and steward those resources. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth in how we're managing those resources, how we're being good stewards of our resources and of the earth, being good guardians of our resources, of the earth, of our communities, and really doing our part to see, what does my community need, starting with
your
the
family,
people around me,
Yeah.
And then expanding from there. And once my family has their needs met, which isn't a finite thing that just happens, right? It's an ongoing, evolving thing. But like when we're more or less like we know how to sustain ourselves, now from our overflow, how do we teach others to sustain themselves? Because I don't think just giving resources to people is helpful. You can give $1 million to someone, and within a year or two, that money's gone, and they have nothing to show for it.
Didn't even invest it.
Or it made their life worse, because now all their friends and family are mad at them because they're not giving them money. All these other problems, right? But if you build vehicles of creation and those resources are multiplying and you're doing good and benefiting people, I think that's the sauce. And so I would love to see more and more teachers in our world, more and more examples and models and guides and coaches and mentors, so that we can help each other to learn how to become better stewards of our resources. And like you said earlier, which I thought was brilliant, how can I better manage the resources I have now? Because
that's right.
The problems are only going to be amplified when you have more.
Yep.
When you have $1,000 or $10,000 or $100,000 or $1 million, your problems are amplified. They're still there. Wherever you go, there you are. So I think that's a big piece of the solution I see to kind of the global resource issue is
personal sovereignty.
Personal sovereignty.
Bada bing.
How do I manage my resources better? How do I take full ownership and responsibility for my world and my resources and my opportunities and my struggles, and do the best I can with what I have until I do better? And how do I ask for support that I need, so that if I don't know how to do something, I can learn from someone else? you know, and the internet's great for that. Like there's so many awesome podcasts and people sharing their wisdom and knowledge and experience. You can get mentored for free by so many incredible minds and incredible heart spaces like on the internet. And so I think curating social media following to people who you resonate with and who will build you up and you can learn from is one way that you can get free coaching and free mentorship and really improve your situation just by finding those right resources for you.
And surrounding yourself with the people that you want to become like.
Yep. And that's the other part is the people around you who you interact with. Maybe you need to change your circle. Maybe you need to disconnect with certain friends. Not that they're bad people.
This is a good topic.
But they don't resonate with you anymore. And I've had to go through this, you know, or they, you know, certain people just fall out of your life because you go into other communities or you're learning something else on another path. Like I know we went to high school together. Fun fact for people who are listening. But then we hadn't connected for years. And just recently we came back into each other's worlds, each other's spheres, and I'm like, oh my God, you've like walked a similar path to me, this such and such way, and it's super cool to like reconnect with you now, and we have so much more to share with each other.
I think it's Kyle Kingsbury who describes this as pluses, equals, and minuses, and you can just kind of like designate these people in your life. Well, if there's somebody that you're around you always feel depleted after, it's like taking from you, that person's kind of a minus in your life. And you just need to make sure that you have more equals and pluses than you do minuses. So right now, Nathan Coury is an equal and a plus because I am learning from him and he sees me as equal. And it's beautiful. So being able to just designate those pluses and minuses can be really helpful in whittling down, like, all right, well, where's my energy leaking? Where are my weak points? How can I make a more solid foundation for myself with the people I surround myself with?
Yeah, I love that. That's a super great model because it's so simple and it's something that you could almost even just on a sheet of paper draw like minus equal plus.
Yeah.
And just write down where do the people who you most interact with in your life fall if you're being honest with yourself. And no one has to see that paper.
Write down the
burn it afterwards.
Top 20 names and the people in your life. Are they a plus, an equal, or a minus? Does it change at different times? But overall, what is it?
Yep. And I want to say too, because that's been a difficult thing for me because I'm such a caring person. I've, in the past, held on to people for too long who weren't meant to be in my life anymore. We really, at the end of the day, weren't benefiting either of ourselves. And most of the time, if someone ends up in a minus column, they're not only are they not benefiting you, you're probably not benefiting them. Maybe they're kind of leeching onto you in certain ways, but they need to stand on their own 2 feet. You know, maybe they're depending on you too much for certain things. And that's why you feel drained, and that's ultimately not good for them either. So it's like,
and you feed it because you don't want to hurt their feelings or change your comfort level of who are my friends.
It's like people pleasing. You know? That's really where it stems from. Is people pleasing. You're afraid to say no. You're afraid for people to have their perception of you broken.
That
you're
is
a nice guy
one.
or a nice girl. Like that's what the fear is, you know? And I've had to break through that so many times. But, you know, I just trust even deeper now that if someone is in the negative column, again, it's not because they're a bad person or sometimes maybe I just don't like this person, and that's okay too.
That's a different thing, though. It's how much are they benefiting my life, or how much are they like taking energy from me?
What's the energy exchange? And if it's a negative energy exchange, they're just not aligned. They're just not resonant. And
not aligned to what your needs are. They can be aligned to themselves, perhaps, but that's
and when I say alignment, I mean our paths aren't aligned. It's not mutually beneficial for us to be in each other's lives at the moment. You know, and it's always at the moment. It's always for now. Because I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how certain paths will intertwine in the future's time, but I know that if this is happening consistently enough, then I need to gracefully take a step back from this person. If they're not getting the message, maybe I need to speak it a little more directly, like, hey, like, I'm not interested in connecting in this way. Or like another phrase that I like that I learned from one of my coaching friends is, I'm not available for that anymore.
Oh, that's a healthy one.
Yeah, I'm not available for that. I'm not available to support you in that way. Or I'm not available to connect with you in that way thank you for the invitation, and like I'm not available for that.
Yeah,
and I plan to be.
Instead of the sorry I can't.
Yeah, or sorry I can't. Oh, like maybe next week, or like.
Oh yeah, bullshitting.
Oh, like yeah, no, like just be direct with someone. Honestly, they will respect you much more for that. They might dislike you in the moment. Yeah. They might be triggered by it. They might think bad things of you, but at the end of the day, it's what's for their best, it's what's for your best, and they will ultimately respect you more for it. I can almost guarantee that, because you will be a person of integrity, and you will just show up with that energy in your life more. And the people who you, this is the other thing that's kind of been one of the secrets on how I got better at this, because this has been a big struggle. It's been saying no to someone is saying yes to someone else. So when I say no to someone who is not a mutual energy exchange in my life, I am saying a bigger yes to the people who are, and our relationships become even better, because now I have more time, attention, and energy to devote to the people who I most resonate with, and I can show up to that relationship a lot more powerfully, because I have freed up my energy over here from this thing that wasn't really working that well, and now I can redistribute that energy to the relationships that I care most about. And now I'm an even better friend or partner or family member to this other person who I care about, and I now have more to give to them, and I can impact their life in a much better way, and I can receive more from them as well, because I'm more available for that. So that has made that process a little easier, because if I say yes to this person or this opportunity even that's not in alignment for me, I'm saying no to something that is in more alignment. If I can say no to the thing that feels in lesser alignment, I'm saying yes to the thing that's in greater alignment.
Yeah, whether you know what it is at that time or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just about being in that integrity with yourself and saying this doesn't serve me right now.
Yep.
Like a plant will grow toward the light. It won't grow toward the shadow, because the shadow doesn't feed it. It doesn't grow toward the darkness. And if it does, it dies. Or it suffers.
Yeah.
And we want to be like that. We want to grow toward what feeds us in life.
Yeah. Exactly. Whew.
Well, man.
I feel like we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, this has been really, really beautiful. Thank you so much for showing up. It's been a great conversation, and hope to talk to you again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for having me on. I super enjoyed this, and excited to have you on my podcast.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Let's shout out your places people can find you again. Instagram.
Yeah, so Instagram at Nathan Coury, NathanCoury. You can search the same name on Facebook if you want to follow me on there. And then Freak Brothers Pizza is also my restaurant, and my podcast will be kind of associated under that brand. It's called The Freak Life Show. That was initial title. It's actually going to be called What the Freak.
What the Freak.
What the Freak.
Okay.
So
What the Freak.
Just talking about what the freak is going on in the world, in your life, like just what the freak. It's kind of like 2020. What the freak's going on?
Oh man, it's what's the thing Joe says? Freak party. Freak party. That's a Joe Rogan thing. That's so funny. The other thing was the coaching thing. Do you have a place that people can reach out to you if they want some sort of coaching?
Yeah. So you can just message me on my Instagram.
Okay.
I am in the process of kind of like redoing my website right now. But if you just follow me on my Instagram, I share some good stuff on my stories. I'm just starting to make a few posts now. And you can just message me on there if you are interested in learning more about what it would look like to work with me.
Cool. Nathan Coury, thank you so much.
Thanks, bro.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Nathan Coury. Thank you for tuning in to the Allcast podcast. I'm Andrew Powell, and I'll have another episode coming up for you before too long. Once again, thank you to James Motes for making this possible up till now. And everybody have a beautiful, beautiful day.